Residents must challenge the decision in Superior Court. They scramble to pool their resources and find a lawyer. It's not easy to find one who is both inexpensive and experienced. They settle on one that will start for a $10,000 retainer. The lawyers representing the big developer know how to slow walk a legal case. First, they file a motion for summary judgment. Then they argue issues of legal standing. The judge denies these motions, but they consume time and money. When their day in court arrives, most of the retainer has been spent. The attorney needs another $10,000 to proceed. Judge, our attorney says, this case is built on the flawed premise that red is green. It's not. I rest my case. An opposing lawyer speaks. Red cannot always be distinguished from green, he says. Sometimes, under certain lighting conditions or due to certain types of color blindness, red can look like green. This must be taken into account in this case. Another lawyer steps to the podium. The fact is that Bellevue's land use code makes no distinction about red or green. It is truly colorblind. Now, this may have been an oversight, but those are the rules under which the applicant filed this project. Maybe that question can be clarified in future revisions of the land use code, but for now, these are the rules that apply. The judge finds that there was no error in the hearing examiner's decision. The residents disagree with the conclusion, but there's no money left for an appeal. The residents have gotten a worse outcome after investing tens of thousands of dollars. The process we have today might not be great, but it works. There are numerous examples of where the City Council rejected or remanded a bad decision at no cost to the parties. Let's keep that intact. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Prickey, Randy Gaddy, and Mike Young.
Good evening, City Council members. My name is Steve Fricky. I live at 14430 Southeast 19th Place, Bellevue, Wash. I'm testifying here in opposition of changing the quasi-judicial position from your Land Code Act. The staff presentation is highly biased. It only shows what's in favor of striking this. If you were to look at that, you'd say there's no cost to this. Well, that's just not true. Who is the beneficiary of striking this provision? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people. That's it. Who is the ultimate losers by striking this? All of these people out here and all those people that live over there. What are they losing? They're losing a speedy appeal process with no lawyers. They don't have to, as Mr. Marsh said, $10,000, that's not even going to get you in court. I'm going to tell you that right now. That's a lot of money. They can't afford it. So and then who else loses? The Superior Court loses. Why does the Superior Court lose? Because you perfect the record for the Superior Court. You're the appeal process for these people. Also, the city staff brought up all these local jurisdictions of striking this from. I live in Bellevue. I want to be Bellevue as a leader, not a follower of our local people here. We should lead by making sure everybody has a voice in these proceedings. You know, when you took this job and when you ran voluntarily for office, you knew this was part of your job. Now you're taking it away from yourself. You're trying to, it seems like. When you were looking at abandoned easements on people's property, you were asking some of the questions, well, should we get money for it? Well, then the question is, if you take this off of your job duty, are you going to give some of your salary back to the public? That is something that you should probably comprehend. Now, you're taking people's voice out of the process. Democracy is not supposed to be efficient. It's supposed to be effective. And effective means giving people a right in the process. Now, if you don't feel like you're qualified to do this job, there's a way to do it. You can step down. I know at least one person that's running for city office that feels qualified to take this job, has the mediator training, and can take that job and will have no problem doing it. And so I ask you, I actually implore you to not go this direction and keep quasi-judicial and people's voice in the process. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Gaddy, followed by Mike Young, and then Barry Zimmerman.
Hi, I'm Randy Gaddy. I live at 7242 Lakemont Boulevard Southeast. I just want to express my strong opposition to doing away with processes 1 and 3. It seems like, and I'm a blue collar guy, just retired truck driver after 40 years. You know, it seems like to me that this process, if this were eliminated, this would take away my basic democratic rights. And to be able to come to you guys locally and to voice my opposition, or maybe the other side of the coin. But I don't want to get involved with superior courts. I don't want to get involved with hearing examiners that I don't know. You know, you guys are elected. You're being paid to do a job, and you're accountable to me, and that's the way I like it. So I'm very much strongly in opposition to this, and I also like to see that this be extended out to possibly January before any decisions made. It's the dead of summer right now. Probably a lot of people couldn't be here because they're on vacation. I think that this process needs to be extended and thought more extensively. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mike Young, Barry Zimmerman, and then Barbara Braun.
Mr. Mayor, City Council members, my name is Mike Young.
Microphone, louder.
Mike Young. My wife Julie and I live at 5031 Lakehurst Lane, Bellevue, 98006. I'm an unlikely person to be opposing this amendment, proposed amendment, but I do. I spent over 40 years, I'm a recovering lawyer, talking to judges and professional hearing examiners in areas of their expertise. My sister and brother-in-law spent their whole working lives in the city planning and adjudication area. So I don't have a hostility. I don't have an individual axe to grind. Julie and I are not involved in any land use processes right now. But I came here with quite a few questions about this, and I'm grateful to the staff's presentation. They answered several of them, but they raised some new ones, and for what they're worth, I just want to identify them for you. Deputy Mayor, I respect your drilling down on the remands and trying to get a better handle on those, but maybe it's simplistic, but when I look at 8 appeals, and 4 out of the 8 were either reversed or remanded, what I get out of that is that you or your predecessors on the council felt that the case before you wasn't right for approval at that time. It needed more work, it needed more staff attention, it needed more attention from the hearing examiner, or it was just wrong. And so the fact that those may have ultimately been approved doesn't mean that your action in sending him back to the hearing examiner was a waste of time or didn't provide some justice and some opportunity to be heard by those individuals. Something else that troubles me, and it apparently troubled one of the earlier speakers, is the efficiency versus effectiveness idea, and especially in local government, the accountability, the direct accountability of you to your constituents is just huge. And when on the slide they list potential bias and politics as negatives, one of the earlier speakers pointed out a lot of these land use decisions impact, sometimes significantly, a lot of people other than the property owner that's before you. And I think it's a plus, honestly, that you're politicians. I think it's a plus that you're taking these other things into account, and I encourage you to continue doing it. Thank you for your time.
Sorry, Barry Zim, I believe.
Yep.
Lost, yes. Mr. Zimmerman, followed by Barbara Braun, and then Michelle Wanamaker.
Hi, I appreciate this chance to address you this evening. My name is Barry Zimmerman. I live with my wife Catherine at 5007 Somerset Drive Southeast in Bellevue. I'm here to oppose the proposed process changes for all the reasons we've been hearing here from our private speakers, our previous speakers. And also I want to point out that both in the staff report document, and we heard it on a bullet point, and Matt, with all due respect, this is based on a very flawed assumption that public opinion should not influence outcomes. In a representative government, your jobs are all about public opinion. You work for us. And so this is a very flawed assumption for even moving forward with this thing. And of course, I was struck when I saw 8 cases in 17 years. I said, why are we even here? Why is this even an issue? Who brought this up? Who's doing the power grab here? This to me has all the earmarks of a sellout to corporate interests. And I think that the reason you're hearing what you're hearing tonight is we all feel the same way. The land use staff currently in place is not satisfying the public in any way, shape, or form. And I won't name names, but they're here, and I think that something needs to be done about this. Let's use the Energize East Side project as an example. In 3.5 years, the Land Use Commissioner Director meets multiple times per month with PSE and has steadfastly refused to meet even once with an organized coalition of citizens who have a whole lot to say and spend a lot of money to work this project to provide data. That to me is not indicative that the notion of accountability means anything to the Land Use Commission. And what's going on here is just reducing accountability to the people. There's no such thing as a neutral hearing examiner. The people don't get to hire them, we don't get to vet them, we don't get to elect them, and there's no accountability to us, any of us. And the world that the Land Use Commissioner lives in right now is no accountability. She's not holding PSE accountable, and I don't see that she's being held accountable either. So I say option 1 is not an option, and that it's back to the drawing board, and I agree that we should wait until January to take up this issue with the next council. Thank you.
I would move to extend the meeting till 10:30.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded to extend the meeting to 10:30. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Continue.
Barbara Braun, Michelle Wanamaker, followed by Richard Canner.
Good evening, I'm Barbara Braun. I live at 13609 Southeast 43rd Place in Bellevue. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this. So like the others, I'd like you to consider really what your role is and what the value is that you bring to the city of Bellevue. Why do citizens elect you, and what do the citizens expect? Basically, we expect you to actively build a city that maximizes the quality of life for its citizens. We don't expect you to be a pass-through or a rubber stamp for developers. We expect you to be our eyes and our ears, and for you to represent the best interests of the city and of our community. In my observation, the city council here spends too much time and places too much power in the hands of the city administrators, and frankly in the hands of private developers. You were not elected, who were not elected by the citizens and who may not represent or uphold the will of the citizenry. That's what we count on you to do, you the council. It's a bad idea to remove the council from the hearing examiner decision in substantial land use cases. Doing this will move the council away from representative democracy, will place too much power in the hands of administrators and the hands of corporate interests. And it will require citizens to independently represent community interests via the courts at their own expense. The argument that this responsibility is too time-consuming, as others have said, there's no proof of that. It's not too burdensome. There's no evidence that that's been the case. So there seems to be no cause for changing the law or the procedure. And my proposal is you just drop this. Don't delay it, drop it. Instead, we should be doing more to expand the power of the council to represent the citizens of Bellevue. We should be moving more towards representative democracy. We would like to, we think you should be moving more towards a system where we have an elected mayor, like Seattle, and where we have council members that represent neighborhoods, specific neighborhoods and neighborhood interests. This is what you should be considering instead of this proposal. Thank you.
Ms. Wanamaker, followed by Richard Kainer, and then Janice Medley.
Michelle Wanamaker, 4045 149th Avenue Southeast. For those of you who are wealthy or lawyers, appealing to the Supreme Court may be an option. But for those of us who are not, and especially for a great many of us who live in the more moderately priced neighborhoods, that is not an option. You silence our voices. If this has been in the works for several years, why are staff trying to push it through right before the August break? I would also echo the request to put this decision off until after the election. Please listen to your constituents and vote no on this. And I will echo Mr. Fricke and say democracy is not supposed to be efficient. Thank you.
Richard Kainer, followed by Janice Medley, and then Randy Grind.
Good evening. Rick Kainer. I'm at 6025 Hazelwood Lane Southeast here in Bellevue, and I've been a East Side resident since '63, which unfortunately was not the year of my birth. I understand the outlined benefits of the amendment as the staff presented, but I think on the other side of the issue, as has been stated by several others, it diminishes the opportunity of the average citizen to challenge a ruling. I feel that our taxes finance the city government, and a legitimate challenge should be heard by our elected officials. If there's a perceived injustice, a court challenge, and the financial and other obstacles that it involves should not be our first and only option. I also think that as a city, we should never abdicate an opportunity to determine our destiny. It may not be popular or even politically expedient, but this is in part what we have elected you to do. I realize that decisions aren't always going to go my way. I've had some practice with that in the last few years. But I can't think of anything worse than not having an opportunity for a legitimate rebuttal or a voice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Janice Medley. Janice Medley.
Janice Medley?
Just
yes.
a moment, just before we
Right.
start. Randy Grind, and then it looks like Kathleen, well, I'm sorry, you live on 132nd Avenue Southeast. I'm sorry, I couldn't get the name. You're on.
All right. Janice Medley. I live at 4609 Somerset Drive, Southeast in Bellevue. And I am here to read part of a letter that Rick Aramburu, the attorney for Sense, helped us with and sent to you in order to understand what this whole proposal really means. So we were concerned from the get-go that we were maybe not understanding it correctly and paid money to get a correct interpretation. So I want to read number 3 of a point that he made. The council is in the best position to review its own codes and propose conditions to conditional use permits or rezones. The entirety of the Bellevue Land Use Code has been adopted by the City Council, and the Council